You know, each of us recall in memory, in very nonlinear ways, striking images from our past, and they become quite loaded up with content. And one of the exciting things for me is if I can capture some of that. Fire in the hole! Ready and there, action.
There was a nexus of things that Michael was interested in and had been interested in his whole career, which made him, I think, the critical component to getting a John Dillinger film made.
The challenge of the work is trying to make 1933, 1934 be alive, as vivid, as complex, as detailed as 2/17, a Thursday afternoon in 2009.
Rolling! Jump speed! D-mark! 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 Come on, Sugar, let's go. Come on!
Michael created a lot of the architecture of the script that we're shooting, which, as its organizing principle, laid out the idea that all of these characters existed in this time and place, after which American society was very different than it was before.
It's happening at a time when two massive forces are conspiring against Dillinger. What Hoover's building with the FBI, which is the first national police force, and organized crime was getting corporatized. They had made a tremendous amount of cash during Prohibition, and when Prohibition ended, they put it into gambling, prostitution, which are more like businesses. And they didn't want the heat of the publicity that these basically 19th century bank robbers were generating. So those two forces are going to assault Dillinger.
Michael's perspective almost was like a Western about this time and place where the men who you watch in the movie were rendered obsolete by the organization of the 20th century that Hoover was a part of, that organized crime was a part of, and that, you know, a couple of guys running around with Tommy guns robbing banks, they really had no place in contemporary society anymore.
It's something that Brian Burroughs, who wrote Public Enemies, alluded to in trying to understand who these people are. There was a mystery about Dillinger. This guy who could plan in such great detail, couldn't plan next month. The significance of that is that eventually the odds are going to go against you. So there was no sense of future. Just take the notion of fate. You know, what did Dillinger think was going to happen to him?
What we're doing won't last forever.
We're having too good a time today. We ain't thinking about tomorrow.
The depression and the dust storms have happened to people. You know, nature happened to you. It killed your loved ones. It made life expectancy be 51, 52, as opposed to like 78, which it is right now in 2009. When you got shot, you got shot. I guess I got shot. I guess I'm gonna die. I mean, that was it just happened. That's where these expressions like, my time is up, there's a bullet with your name on it, that's where all this comes from. What was fascinating to me about Dillinger was the inner man, this guy who explodes out of 9 years in prison and is going to have everything and get it right now.
And what do you want?
Everything. Right now.
Funny enough, like when I was a kid, like a little kid, I was absolutely fascinated with John Dillinger. He was, for good or ill, exactly who he was, without any compromise whatsoever.
D-mark! Cover your ears!
And this is a guy who came from Mooresville, Indiana, which is actually very, very close to where I come from. So I related in a sense like he was a relative. I felt like he was of the same blood in a way.
I try to design that relationship that I'm going to have with the actor relative to that actor and to the role. And everyone's different. There's no two that are the same. It could never be, if you think about it, because if somebody's individualized that skill and becomes so good at doing it, of course it's got to be personal. If it's personal, it's going to be unique to that individual.
I could have my jacket on.
Johnny is really interested in wardrobe. If he has the right shoes, and the right clothes, and the right fabric, and it feels the right way on him, it helps him get there.
Yeah, hypnotic.
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 Yep. Okay.
I would want to have him have as much contact with the reality of John Dillinger.
And action.
And we were able to get our hands on a suitcase that Dillinger had abandoned when he fled Little Bohemia. And in the suitcase is everything that Dillinger had there. And it's a leather dop kit and little bottles for cologne and one thing and another, and shirts from a Chinese laundry with the paper still wrapped around it.
And cut.
And so you were able to actually touch something that Dillinger had touched.
Ready and action.
I'd never worked with Michael before, but I'd gotten an indication because of the research that we had done.
Here's the man who killed Pretty Boy Floyd. Damn good thing he was pretty, because he sure wasn't with his kid Floyd.
No detail is too small, Nothing is unimportant, He wants to know absolutely everything.
Michael and we'd gone together to Washington, and we'd gone around the FBI headquarters at Quantico.
And then just, it's getting to sit and pick their brains, have dinner with them.
Christian Bale, his particular method is to turn himself into a character. And if a character has a certain look and a certain attitude and gestures and accent, then Christian will have that 24 hours a day.
I'd like to introduce one of our finest G-men, Agent Melvin Purvis.
Purvis came from a very, very southern, totally static cultural background where the values you had were almost pseudo-inherited, almost as if it was genetic material or DNA. The FBI at the time was just forming and using very progressive modern technology and wiretaps. So Melvin Purvis comes along, and this is the future. So he picks it up. But along with the future that Hoover imagines is kind of a brutal expediency.
Tell me! Pick up all known Dillinger associates.
You do whatever it takes to get it done.
The suspects ought to be interrogated vigorously.
And this had to go against the way Melvin Purvis thought Melvin Purvis ought to be.
He had such accolades as a hero in the press, but I think personally was very conflicted about the direction that the Bureau was taking.
So in Christian's case, what we try to do is fully form the character of Purvis outside of the story, the screenplay and the words, and then collided that Melvin Purvis with the story. So that there were almost unexplained moments of real internal disruption.
Michael directs like a jazz musician or a boxer. He has a plan, but it can all change at any specific moment.
Hey, Mark.
And there was this little scene in the bar in Little Bohemia. He went, well, what do you want to do? I said, how about if I do an impression of James Cagney? Want to see my James Cagney? Want to see my James Cagney, yeah? Huh? What do you see? What do you say? What do you know, huh? What's your name, doll? We're set up to do something, and we'll be going there with it, but then he'll all of a sudden have a little idea, and he'll go, well, let's try this now. Let's move this way.
Any opportunity to improvise, whether it's the beginning of a scene, during a scene, or after a scene, I think opens up all the possibilities of chance, which are unlimited. So I salute Michael for that.
I have such a tremendous regard for what actors do, without fear, without embarrassment. Everybody has these dark currents inside of us. To be able to reach down and bring that up, that's courageous.
He will not stop until he's got exactly what he was going for. And there were times when I felt like it was a strange, almost kind of ESP, because there were scenes where I jump off the car and I'm running the whole time and I'm firing my Thompson, dropping that, taking out the 1911, shooting that. Then we cut, and Michael came on. He said, "Could you maybe try to have that thought right after you take out the 1911 instead?" And he was absolutely right.
Okay, once again.
And you don't often get that. You really don't. So many times you're doing an awful lot, and you kind of look around to see, was it? No, nobody saw it at all. He didn't miss anything.
That day's shooting is this fragment, and what one tries to do is be both behind the camera and inside what the scene is, and the more that scene can become real, then I'm attuned to what they're doing, because what they're doing That's really, really difficult. And they do it.
I met convicts' wives because Michael Mann, he wanted me to understand what was the feeling to be in fear.
Don't come to Chicago, Johnny.
I promised I'd look after you, didn't I?
Yes. It was a very special moment because they didn't know how long it would last.
Daddy's French. What's on the other side?
My mama's a Menominee Indian, okay? Most men don't like that.
I ain't most men.
As a Menominee Indian, she was very much a second-class citizen. The preparatory school that she went to was like reform school. So there was nothing but cynicism for federal authorities. And she encounters John Dillinger.
You've been living here long?
Yeah, since yesterday. I believe that when Dillinger laid eyes on Billy Frechette, he recognized that she was an outsider as he was.
Billy Frechette was a very independent spirit and really trying to make her way in Depression-era Chicago. And it was really, really tough. You know, how do you get enough to eat? How do you buy a coat to keep you warm? That's what the daily life and the daily grind was about.
He wanted to protect her from everything, anything and everything.
I haven't been any place.
Well, some of the places I've been, it's hot. He fell head over heels. That was without question, the love of his life.
The tough road that strong women sometimes have to go down, that's a road that Marianne and I wanted to explore.
It will catch you or kill you, and I don't want to be there when that happens.
They were living for today without a thought of tomorrow. They were truly living in the moment. And eventually, the odds were going to go against them. They had to.
That very much informed myself and, of course, Johnny and Marion Cotillard in trying to understand the nature of that relationship and the electricity of it.
When I met Michael Mann, I felt something really strong about devotion.
Just get yourself distracted by Johnny's coming and that stops you.
Yeah.
You just walked out of a restaurant last night.
I could be devoted to this guy.
I saw La Vie en Rose, and that was it. You know, the skills of this woman were extraordinary. How deep down and thoroughly, throughout the totality of her being, she would be committed to the truth of the slightest glance. And it's totally unself-conscious. It's not performance. It's just committed to being that woman at that moment, and it's as deep as you want to go.
Okay, here we go for rehearsal.
Michael, he surrounds himself with technical advisors and experts, and he instills confidence in them that they can tell him anything. So you buy into a reality that's palpable, and it's not just a movie, it's a document.
There's a lot of detail about the robbing of a bank. I didn't know this until I talked to people who had done a lot of high-level armed robberies.
The approach hasn't changed except that we never cared to work quite as wild.
How are you?
Because the object is to, not to become public enemy number one.
Jerry pulled off some fantastic armed robberies, including the Marlboro Diamond out of London, a diamond of Winston Churchill's family. It was the size of a grapefruit.
Okay, ready, and action.
Michael, it seems like what he mostly wants to know is what would each character be thinking at different points in time.
Y'all get up against that wall.
What are you thinking when you pull up to the score? What are you thinking inside?
Open it up.
Anything could happen.
When I could be with somebody and ask them, what did you feel like before you went into the score?
Keep rolling, do one more. Still rolling.
And he says, well, the first thing is, before I go into the score, the money's already my money. The attitude is, I'm going in there to get my money. It's already mine.
And cut. That's the home run. Press.
Michael's friend Jerry, really talks about how you cut your teeth driving and what the driver goes through, because, he's sitting outside waiting and it in 2.5 or 3 minutes goes very slowly when you're just waiting for a bunch of dudes to come out with a big load of money. As an actor, I'm looking for what's not being said as well. You're just looking.
I can identify with the characters. What really creates Dillinger is the 10 years in prison. They're rehearsing. That's all they're thinking about, and thinking about getting even day after day after day. And that's what creates this this guy, he comes out running. 3 weeks later, they're working.
I really want to know in great detail, what are you telling yourself in prison? How did you make this mistake? You're never going back again. And when you are driving away from the prison, when you've finally been released, and you see the prison in the rearview mirror, and it's getting smaller and smaller and smaller, that it's like, what are we going to score next? One of the things I try to do is come up with scenarios that could give an actor, as well as myself, that suspension of disbelief, suspension of the now that you're traveling in.
Everybody, please! Stick up!
It usually starts with being good at what that guy was good at, you know, so it'd be good to walk into a real functioning bank. And if I was holding up this bank, what would I be doing? Who do I have to watch out for? Where are the 3 guards? When do they go to get donuts? Who's the guy who's got the key to the bar grill door? The money's behind, the money's there. How do I get to the money? How do I get out? And maybe you could, for a moment, feel if I was John Dillinger, I'm feeling some of what he might have experienced.
Here we go for rehearsal.
I mean, you do your best as an actor to come in both barrels kind of loaded and ready, you know, ready for anything. But you're nothing if you don't have a stage, which was brilliantly orchestrated by Michael's kind of insistence on realism.
B-Mark. Action, Christian! Stop that car! You're an investigator. Federal agent, stop that car! Fire!
I get a sense, if you're filming right to the edge of the set, you can kind of feel what's outside of it. And I think that when you use the real location, you get a kind of a reverence for it, standing in that same spot. Being in those woods, knowing that the man that you are portraying sat in this very spot, was actually fired upon and fired back, I think it's incredibly helpful.
Well, you drive around the woods and flank him!
Firing from the place that he was firing from. In the exact room, in Dillinger's room.
You know, that means a lot, I believe, to an actor and to a director, to find yourself in those environments where you can kind of suspend your disbelief and give yourself into the magic of the moment.
Okay, speed all around. Speed on Charlie.
His films, the thing I like about them is that sort of sense of realism. You don't question the realism of the scene ever, so I think he wanted to apply that to a 1930s film, but try and keep away from stereotypes.
We are approaching this film using multiple cameras to photograph our scenes, so it has an immediacy and a sense of witnessing whatever is happening without introducing never anything that shows that there's something to make it look good. All is extremely real, and to make them participate in whatever is happening.
If a director gets it right, the imagery itself starts to have a truth-telling style, but it means nothing as just image. It's only the content. It only means something as content. Otherwise, it's just a pretty picture.
Well, there's a phrase that I love, which is luck is the residue of design. And I think of that when I see Michael shoot. It's very well prepared, it's very well rehearsed, but then he's able to let it live. What makes a living, breathing thing is that you can give your characters and put them in the situation, and then let the situation sort of create the opportunity.
Some of the best fun you have, if you could ever describe part of this process as fun, but it's some of the best times you have when something kind of comes together. And you create a scene, an environment, and a situation, and it's loaded with people, and it's driven by the drama of the moment. What it would have felt like and looked like and smelled like to be alive at that moment.